thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Likewise.
us.
You bet. So before we get into the book, before we get into, kind of your mission of what you do, I want to begin with something I know we're all getting fatigued by, which is living through COVID. But the pandemic was such a big shapeshifter for all of us. So how did you ultimately make it through the pandemic, and how did it either influence the book or the way that you live your life now?
Mm.
Oh man, wow.
That's a big question.
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
for everybody it was like a huge paradigm shift.
Uh-huh.
We were living in the New York, New Jersey area at the time when it started going down, and the lockdowns were pretty severe up there.
Intense,
Yeah.
A
to
lot
say
of
the
panic, a lot of
least.
fear. Our kids were in daycare at the time, and like the lengths they went to protect the kids, it got to be where it was too much. The kids they couldn't play with each other. They had to wear masks 24/7. They were behind plexiglass at their own desk, and it was just too much. So as far as like how it influenced us, I think it definitely is the reason why we're living here in the South now, because it was just too much, and we felt like if it could happen once, God forbid it happens again. So
Hmm.
we didn't want to be in that environment again. So that's why we changed locations.
Yeah. The one thing I would add is, while there was so much chaos and fear going on around us, we felt like we were, I don't know if you know this story back in Exodus, whereby there was like chaos over in Egypt, but in our home, it felt like Goshen. And there was so much peace. We weren't afraid. We weren't living in fear. The one thing that we regretted though is not being with our families for 3 straight months. So it taught us a lesson of really how to discern and live a more kind of conviction driven lifestyle. We were separated from our families, like our blood relatives, for 3 months. And at the time, it seemed fine because we didn't know better. But in hindsight, we're probably not going to do that again, because it was not worth the separation. So yeah, it taught us a lot of life lessons. But we were so blessed during that whole season to really come together as a family and just live in peace amidst all the chaos that was going on.
Yeah.
For us adults, we had a lot of mileage on our odometer, so we could process it. But when you talk about kids, especially young kids, they had
Yeah.
no way to process it. It was bizarre. I remember at one point, my son's on the autism spectrum, and I remember
Okay.
at one point I saw a PSA that was put out, and everything it told us to do during this COVID time period was completely opposite of what we were taught in
It's what
kindergarten.
he needed. Mm.
Like every
Yeah.
single moral and human thing that would connect us was told to completely get rid of it after all these decades.
Yes.
Sorry, bets
It
off.
was so
And
crazy,
it was weird. It
ridiculous.
was like, how do I do this? And then going into restaurants, we're all protected, but then we take off the mask and we eat
Mask.
complete.
Magically.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? So the whole thing was like, what movie am I in? Where is the boom mic? When are they going to yell cut? Like I was waiting for it to happen, and it
Yeah.
just never did. So, but
No. Thank
sound
God. Thank God.
yeah, but it sounds like you were preemptive and moving and getting to a better place, because as much as we say we're in post-pandemic, I mean,
Hmm.
we still have signs everywhere to get vaccinated. There's
Hmm.
outbreaks. It's like we're
Hmm.
never really truly going to be out of this for a while, I don't think. But
This is the world we live in now. This is just it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I still see people to this day wearing masks occasionally,
yeah,
and
so do
Indoors
I.
so
and
I,
outdoors.
yeah, so I don't know that I would ever feel comfortable living up north again, like I said, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think we all have to be careful about how we allow anybody to tell us what we should believe and what we
Hmm.
shouldn't believe.
Hmm.
We can't just. I don't think we have the luxury of blindly trusting
Anything.
anybody for anything at this point. We have to, do our due diligence as people,
Uh-huh.
make sure we protect ourselves and our families and those we love, and try to carry on a life that reflects God's beauty and love in our lives every day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So we mentioned up front your beautiful book, but to get to the heart and soul of what you do together on a daily
Yeah.
basis as professionals, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids is
Woohoo!
curious and they're like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
Well, I'm in a real estate investment,
Okay.
buying and selling homes. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. That's what I do.
But together,
Together we're authors.
we are authors. We're here to make kids fall in love with biblical truth that will make their lives so much better and enrich them so that they can live without being bound, broken, or broke as adults, like we almost became. So yeah, our thing and our gig is really speaking truth into the lives of children and also the adults in their lives, because it's missing in this generation.
Yeah, it certainly is. So before we get into your history,
Yeah.
how did you meet? How did all of this begin? Take me back to the Alpha.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
dear.
Wow.
How much time do we
Yeah,
have?
right.
It's a long, crazy story, but I'll keep it concise.
Okay, yes,
But
he
yeah,
does the
we
concise.
we met at church primarily.
Uh-huh.
We were going to Times Square Church at the time, and we were both serving in youth ministry, and we got to know each other kind of through that. You
Your
know, just
subway
serving. We used
average.
to preach the gospel in the subways and ride the trains, talk about Jesus and that kind of stuff, and that's kind of where we met. You know, in that environment. And
Like in the wee hours, we're at some youth overnight prayer meeting, and he claims I was sitting down, tired, and looking pretty pitiful on the floor after that meeting was over. And he came to brighten my day by introducing himself. I don't recall any of that, but that's
you don't recall?
I don't recall it being that way, but that's what he claims
That's not
happened.
true.
But yes, we did meet. We met in youth ministry back in New York City.
Okay. It's funny how we remember things because it's like
Yes.
I think about Malcolm Gladwell and the social psychology of things, about how we perceive things, and it's so different. But you didn't just brighten her day, you brightened her life. So
My whole life.
it
He's
worked
my
out.
hero now.
Speaking of heroes in the
Yeah.
beginnings, take me back to where you were born and raised, and how did getting into real estate, becoming authors, how did all of these things kind of become seeds that took root and grew into the spirituality and this mission you have?
Mhm.
Oh, wow, that's a deep question. But
Mhm.
yeah, I was raised in North Carolina, two loving parents. We were in church pretty much every chance we got. We stayed, but I tried to keep it local to the same church my entire life. So, but he was as he got promoted in his company, we were move around from time to town, but he always stayed centralized to that one particular church. Um, yeah, I went to college in the mountains, Appalachian State, and I enjoyed that, at least a little bit. It was quite cold. Wasn't my first choice,
And
but
boring.
quite cold and boring, nothing to do. But I got a good, solid education. But yeah, that's my background. Let her share a little bit
Yeah,
as
so I grew
well.
up in Lagos, Nigeria. And I grew up to a very interesting family. You know, we loved each other, but we didn't express love in the way that we're now intentionally doing with our family. However, I would say yes, went to school. I just did like the normal growing up thing that most children would do. I tried to obey my parents, even though I was really a heathen behind the scenes. Um, and eventually, I moved to the States to study. And I believe that what really caused and made us become who we are is our encounter with God the Father through His Son and His Holy Spirit. That's really what fundamentally shifted who I was, which was just a girl who had very low self-esteem, identity, and any kind of purpose, to someone who's been transformed into what my name actually means. So we didn't actually go through our names, but my name means Nkechi. Nkechi means God's own. My maiden name means lion. So that is who I am in a nutshell. And I believe God brought me the ultimate lion to be married to because he never backs down from anyone or anything. And I believe that our unique relationships with him, him bringing us together, solidified us into who we are now, which is kind of what you're beholding and witnessing through our authorship and everything else. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, you did wonderful. And I'm curious to take this a step further as authors. What was the book for you growing up that really opened up your imagination, your world, and made you really feel like you wanted to be storytellers?
You can answer that and then I'll answer because mine is really easy.
Okay.
Or maybe I can answer it first.
Well, I'll say primarily, would be cliche, but I'll probably say primarily the Bible. And if I had to pick another one as a number two, I'd say Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
That one really spoke to me a lot, quite a bit. I read that one in college. It wasn't actually as a kid. I read that one in college. And I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're fine.
But
Is there someone there?
yeah, sorry about that. But
Oh, you're fine.
but yeah, I read that one in college, and that was like a paradigm shift to a great degree. Just the way he thought about money was completely different and separate than how I had ever heard anybody talk about it ever. So yeah, I think every investor in real estate probably looks at Robert Kiyosaki, quite a bit as somebody that they look up to and admire.
Yeah.
But there's been lots of books along the way.
Oh, definitely.
Lots of books along the way.
Well, Joe, I love your question because this is the absolute irony of the whole matter. I hated reading. I hated school. I could not be bothered with crossing I's and dotting. Sorry, see, I couldn't be bothered with all the minutia of, writing properly and just being a good student. So I really I had no interest in what we're doing now. It wasn't a dream or anything like that. I just found myself discovering my purpose, which we talked about initially, which is to serve this generation. And I got challenged to actually use my creativity to serve in that capacity. And that just happens to be creating a book that did not exist.
Yeah. So who was like a hero or an inspiration for you growing up? Was there a figure that was central in your life that helped you become who you are today?
I would definitely say my dad. Definitely, he was hard worker. He tried to excel at what he was doing, and he achieved quite a bit of success in working in retail. And so yeah, I definitely looked up to my dad quite a bit, and that's the person I probably would say I most admire. And I get it pretty much everything I believe, at least foundationally. I get it from my parents, and in particular my dad.
Yeah, I would say the same. It was my dad until I married this guy. And then he became my hero. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You're obviously a successful couple. You work well together. Is there another couple that exists in the world that you would love to meet, that you emulate, that you see doing the same things as you're doing?
Wow, never thought about that.
Honestly, I hadn't thought about that in particular. A
Or maybe in
couple.
general, maybe anybody out there in general that you might be able to glean something from that would help
Oh,
you with what you're doing?
tons.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say they're known for being an author, but I would say Myron Golden,
Yeah.
somebody we in particular look up to. He's a successful entrepreneur. He has written books, but his main thing is coaching and training, and so that's kind of the back of his business. But yeah, I would say I would love to meet that guy.
My aunt already has, I mean, I know her, and she's been a really fundamental, she's made a fundamental contribution into who I am today. So I wouldn't necessarily skip over her, but yeah, definitely her and her husband as a couple. He mentioned Myron, and then there's several others, even like Andrew Womack, who is an author, and just his style is just like, I don't care what you think about me. Like, it's just so refreshing, how he carries himself, and he stays very, very true to his convictions as well.
So the one thing about being in a relationship is that it's totally different from when you get into a business union together.
Yeah.
What have you learned about each other that's been surprising? What has happened since you decided to become kind of a business team together that's been very surprising that you didn't realize in the marriage capacity?
Honestly, I would say like it has been amazing, like to see the qualities that she has that I don't have, and vice versa. Like it's like we're perfectly in sync. We didn't know this before we started
Yeah.
writing the book. She had her own thing. She stays at home right now
But I
primarily.
used to be in
Well,
commercial insurance.
she used to work for in a commercial insurance environment,
Right.
at a very high level, and so we never really worked together
Right.
until now, past couple of years writing this book, and seeing like what she can do that I can't, and vice versa has been amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know we could work that well together. I thought we'd go nuts.
Because we're very, type A and
Sure.
everything, but he's the guy who I say he leaps over walls. Literally, there's no obstacle.
Yeah.
There's no obstacle that we've been presented with that he's not found a way around or over or under. So I just love the grit in him. I mean, I kind of knew it was there all along, but in the context of doing what we're doing together, it just comes to a whole different level. And I have so much respect for that.
That's what lions do, right? Um, right?
Yes.
So let me ask you this. You're obviously very highly driven. You work well together. What is it that motivates you every day to wake up to do this work? You got your business side, but you also are trying to illuminate and help children understand stories in both a factual and a spiritual
Mhm.
way. What is
Right.
that motivation every day for you to do that?
Well, this really comes from
It's a
our
mandate.
relationship with God. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a
it really
mandate.
stems from that. Because I don't know if we want to go through this whole process, but like it feels like God's been just unveiling different truths to us over time, over like past 10 years or so, and different things. We just see things differently now than what I did when I first became a believer.
Hmm.
And this is part of it,
Hmm.
part of the process, because we were looking for material to be able to teach children about the what we
Ours
yeah,
first.
primarily our children. We're trying to address a problem that we have for our own personal children.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we teach this truth to them? How do we present what the Bible says about creation to children, in particular our children?
Hmm.
And so we feel like we've solved a need for people in that same situation.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, um, it's more of, and this is part of what my mission is now, and our mission through the company that we founded, Yafo Revolution, is to give kids a chance to, at an early age, not in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and before they pass on and leave this realm, but give them an opportunity to discover the truth, who all truth leads to one place and one person. Break the fear that keeps us back from actually knowing like, why are we here? What's our purpose? So that we can do that very thing and be successful, because that is the definition of success, is doing what you were created to do. It's like, why would we use a broom to brush our teeth? Like,
Right.
it just doesn't make any sense. So to take kind of like the long route to answer your question, this is what our family, I believe one of the main things our family was designed to do. We're functioning within the realm of our purpose for such a time as this. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's not for fame, it's not for anything. This is just what God spoke to us, and that's why we're doing it.
So I don't know, a lot of people out there that haven't actually put a book out, it's quite a process from the inception of the idea to getting the publisher and creating everything that goes into it. It's a marathon.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about the idea and how it came to light and how it finally came to fruition and how it felt when you opened up and saw the book for the first time.
Whoa.
Oh wow, we did a whole.
Idea
Well, the idea,
to
oh my gosh. Well, like I said, like over the past 10 or so years, I would say maybe 2014, 2015, I feel like God started highlighting this particular truth, like the earth, how he actually made it, what that looked like is in terms of creation in particular.
And when he told me, just to as a sidebar, I was like, "You're crazy. You've actually fully lost your mind now."
I think what really convinced her was like when actually we just read Genesis chapter 1 and just went line by line, not trying to interpret it in the way we've been taught, and necessarily in Sunday school, but just or by any other
Science teachers or
government
whatever.
organization or anything like that. But just like this is read what the Bible says, regardless of what I personally think about it. Let's just read it out loud. Well, anyway, she got on board eventually. I made the mistake of telling my friends what I believe. Like the Earth, I believe the Earth is, stationary with a dome over it. Like the Bible says. He brings it up at a party amongst all our friends. He says he basically stops the party. Guys, Kurt's believe the Earth is flat. so I was put on the spot, and I had to quit. I had to think quick, and I feel like God inspired me to like, okay, just sit down with your buddies and just draw it out line by line. So they can't argue with me. We're just going to
Yeah.
draw it out. We'll just draw Genesis. I'm not going to interpret it any other way. Let's just draw it the way it says it. And that's exactly what I did. They all gathered around me and looked at me like I'm crazy initially, but we just went line by line. And there's really no refuting what I'm saying because I didn't say it. It's just in there.
Yeah, sure.
This is what it says. It's in there. If you can get a spinning sphere in space, out of Genesis chapter 1,
We're all ears.
then I don't know what to tell you. This is not there. But again, that was kind of the seed of the idea.
Yeah.
The initial idea was just to have a book that just draws out Genesis line by line.
But before we got there, though, so he got put on the spot at the party at the Bronx in New York City, and then like fast forward, we'd moved here. We already had 2 children at the time. We now have 3, and because we're homeschooling parents and we homeschool with others in our community through what is called a co-op meeting, I actually had to sit with my son through one of his science lessons, and they were talking about astronomy, and the tutor started kind of regurgitating what you and I both, and what Curtis also learned from before we could even talk.
Yeah.
And, because at that point I knew what she was saying, I'm sure with all great intention, and talking to these kids about was not true, my heart started racing really fast because I felt like I was witnessing indoctrination happening all over again. And now my son was involved, but he looked at me and was like, he didn't say anything. So anyways, it kept happening over and over. And the more it happened, the more I felt convicted, like, oh my goodness, something has to happen, like something has to change. So talked about it with my husband, and I prayed, and I felt God really saying, okay, what are you going to do? And I kept asking, well, we need a book. And we started searching for books along these lines, and it just did not exist, Joe. It didn't exist. We looked, I even purchased a few books, and it just kind of was flat. Either went all in one direction of, science, or not at all. So anyways, God spoke to us and we felt like we were supposed to create it. And that's really why we attempted this crazy process called becoming an author, by actually learning how to write a story. We didn't even know how to write a story. Like, what does that even mean? So we became students of, books and children's books, and we just studied and researched. Fast forward to more than 2 years later, between that time, we had to find an artist who's actually based in Nigeria. I mean, it was just so crazy. But once we eventually got the book and we found a publisher, here in the US to print the book, it was just an unbelievable experience. We actually have a video of us unboxing our very first printed book on YouTube on our channel, Set the Earth is Flat.
It was quite the experience.
It was so beyond amazing.
It was something else. It's been a 2-year labor of love, a lot of meetings. Countless meetings with our author, just trying to explain.
With our artists.
The artist, rather.
Because he too wasn't necessarily totally convinced.
We had to sell him first, because we had a lot of people that turned us down.
Yeah, they would not work on this.
They didn't want anything to do with it. But we found somebody, a childhood friend actually, that
who's a believer.
Who's a believer. And he's actually a really, really talented guy. Graphic artist. And
beautiful. The art's beautiful,
job. He did an amazing job, and he really brought the vision to life. But it was countless meetings. Countless meetings.
We're still having meetings.
Yeah, for sure. So before I shuttle everyone to get out and make sure that they get your book, I want to ask you this. As a couple, everyone has a perception of who they think you are. Everyone that buys your book, everyone that you work with, every family, friends, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are as a couple?
How much time do we have?
See?
You can start.
I know as a couple, we're a set apart couple. We are not, we don't blend in any circles. We're just different. We're fundamentally different, and we're very comfortable with that at this point. Initially, it was kind of like, why do we always, but no, we've completely embraced our uniqueness. And it really stems from our desire to, first of all, please God, and then serve other people through what he's given us to serve them with. So it may rub people the wrong way sometimes, why it seems like we're so out in the stratosphere somewhere, but the whole, like us as a couple, we love God and we want to love people well and authentically enough to be able to tell them the truth in love, but also just learn from each other. So we love to serve people. We love to give. You know, that's one of our love languages, is just blessing people with what we have and what we don't have, you know, sometimes. And at the core, we're really creatives. I think this has shown us the fact that, you know, in the beginning, God created. Well, we're now emulating our Father because He's created us to create, so that we can solve other people's problems and, you know, have that amazing exchange of a transaction where they're blessed, we're blessed, and everybody wins. So I just took the short and succinct route to answer that question. But at the core, that's just who we are. We're fearless lions who are sent to help raise a generation that will be challenged and equipped and inspired to just fearlessly serve God to the fullest of their ability. And we're learning that process as we speak as well.
Yeah. She says fearless. I mean, it doesn't mean we never have fears.
Or, no.
Insecurities.
But
it means
we take them on.
We do feel convicted to do regardless.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
And as far as the book, I don't know if it's possible to share a clip of that, or maybe you can add that to the end of it. But that is really what I feel people most resonate with, is when they actually see see what we've created, not just hear what we've said we've created.
Yeah, I will definitely illuminate that whenever I put it out. So this has been wonderful. If anyone wants to pick up a copy, they want to reach out to you, any of the good business, where do they go?
Westeif.com, WSTEIF.com. That's WSTEIF.com.
And why Westeif? Westeif is the acronym for Who Said the Earth is Flat.
There you go.
You can't miss it.
Right.
So it's Westeif.com. And then that has like you see our email address there if you end up on that landing page as well, if you want to reach out personally. I would love to hear from everybody.
Absolutely. I will definitely get it in the notes. This has been delightful. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with the book and everything else. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Great to meet you.